Well, here we go again. Our favorite topic, intersectionality. You see, as someone who has been vegan for years now, I've heard it all. Yet in this day and age, where literally everyone and everything is racist, this regurgitated argument that veganism is somehow a white privilege thing that unfortunately has been resurfaced. For the millionth time, veganism is not about you, your gender, skin color, race, religion, or sexuality. It's about the animals. Stop being so self-absorbed.
His claim was that white veganism focuses solely on animal liberation while ignoring every other injustice. That's not white veganism. According to every single definition of veganism you can find, that's the definition of regular veganism. Focusing on animal liberation, because that's what veganism has always been about, reducing harm to animals. So I find it very narcissistic that these intersectional vegans will try and use compassionate vegans to speak up to their own movement.
Now, all white people vegans are white vegans.
And the next claim that was made said, not all white people vegans are white vegans, which is odd because all white people vegans are in fact white vegans, but just not by your definition because you made up the term white vegan to fit something that it's really not, something that doesn't exist. A vegan who focuses only on animal rights, which is what a vegan is supposed to do. We're not civil rights activists, and just because we care about animal rights, it doesn't mean we have to focus on any other injustice.
The very concept of veganism or vegetarianism is nothing new. It can literally be dated back to over 1,000 years ago by an Arabic poet, Al-Mahari. I no longer steal from nature. You are diseased in understanding and religion. Come to me that you may hear something of sound truth. Do not unjustly eat fish the water has given up, and do not desire as food the flesh of slaughtered animals, or the white milk of mothers who intended its pure draught for their young, not noble ladies. And do not grieve the unsuspecting birds by taking eggs, for injustice is the worst of crimes. And spare the honey which the bees get industriously from the flowers of fragrant plants. For they did not store it that it might belong to others, nor did they gather it for its bounty and gifts. I washed my hands of all this, and I wish that I perceived my way before my hair went gray.
In fact, veganism can be traced back over 2,000 years to the ancient cultures in India, the Mediterranean basin, and, drumroll please, Africa. Now, when it comes to a lot of traditional Black American cuisine, you wouldn't be wrong to say that it features, well, a lot of meat. But this hasn't always been the case.
There's always been like this river of African Americans who've been pioneers in the vegan movement. Originally, there were plants and people were eating plants. I mean, that's the natural thing for us to eat. That's what we gravitated towards. That's what looked good to us. That's what our bodies were made to eat. So this is just nothing new.
But this vegan tradition changed when European adventurers, aka colonizers, introduced more commercial farming methods, which produced a lot more animals, but also fewer indigenous crops. So, the veganism of today is actually more of a nod to the traditions of Africa rather than a recent phenomenon.
In many ways, it is the white man who introduced this new way of eating copious amounts of meat and dairy by introducing livestock. Today, it is estimated that 95% of farmers in the U.S. are white. Most dairy farmers are also white, yet 3/4 of African Americans are lactose intolerant. If anything, veganism is a rejection of whiteness. Again, the very concept of vegetarianism or veganism is nothing new. The term vegan didn't even exist until about the 1940s, introduced by Donald Watson. But let's back up yet to a decade or so in the 1930s with the rise of the Rastafarians. As they like to say, Ital is vital. Ital is the diet of the Rastafari movement of Jamaica. It is a vegetarian diet principally intended to improve the health and energy. It is thought that being vegetarian is to be closer to the universal energy and life force and to avoid bringing death to God's creatures. The healthier you eat, the less you have to see a doctor, a concept now just catching on in the mainstream. As processed foods were being introduced in the 1950s, Rastas took a firm stance against them even before research proved how unhealthy they can be. Staying away from processed foods keeps Rastas away from Western medicine, another thing the religion avoids. Let the food be your doctor. So let's recap here. Veganism isn't a new thing that white privileged people invented. It's been around for centuries. If anything, it's white people who introduced the idea of copious livestock consumption. Avoiding harm and suffering to God's creatures is not a new concept. And for those who struggle with being accused of being white or privileged, let me introduce yet end this video with Soy Theist.
So, this is the kind of question this is what I was hoping we would get, because this is your forte, right? What advice would you give Amanda?
I think what needs to be realized is that when people are saying, that when you're advocating to let's say like indigenous people, right, of North America, or any other sort of person of color, right? I hate the term, but when you're
so racist, isn't it? Sorry,
yeah.
It's such a racist person, a coloured person is basically what you're saying, and that's like the most racist. Anyway, sorry, continue. I just wanted to chime in.
When you're like the better term is to, of course, say when you're talking to racial minorities, right? See them as your equals. Right? See them as your equals. See them as equal human beings who are capable of reaching the same moral standard that you are capable of reaching. Because, well, they are capable of reaching the same moral standard that you are capable of. And anyone who says otherwise is bigoted, right? And it may be that the very person whom you're talking to, it may be that racial minority member. And the thing you should say to them is that, okay, how do I phrase this? Okay, you could tell them that, you respect them enough, right, to be straightforward with them, to not treat them like a child, right, to talk to them as you would talk to any other person, right? So I think that's how you should go about it.